Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Stokes for Advanced Pain Solutions in Fort Myers, Florida. I've just finished a 2-year experiment in diet. I ran a primarily vegetarian-based diet for a year and recorded all my blood work, and then I ran a Paleolithic diet for a year and recorded all that, and I just finished it. And these are the results. So, first of all, there were some surprises here. What I was eating was, when I was eating a vegetarian diet, I was eating primarily beans and brown rice, everything organic. I was eating organic tempeh as a main protein source, some fruits. I was drinking tea, low caffeinated green tea, and I was also drinking organic soy milk and water, of course. But I could drink fruit juice, but I wasn't really eating any animal-based protein products, and I wasn't drinking milk. And then when I switched over and went to Paleolithic, I was eating the opposite, right? So I'm eating lots of meat, lots of saturated fats. I was eating 3 eggs with avocado, cheese, and bacon every day, or 5 days out of 7 days a week for breakfast. I was eating under 20 grams of carbohydrates a day. No fruit. And so the results of that were interesting. Basically, my glucose levels stayed between 88 and 98 for either diet. So my blood glucose didn't change really. And my A1C stayed around 5.0. So that really didn't change, even though I was doing 2 different diets, stayed about the same. My homocysteine level, though, changed dramatically. So when I was doing a Paleolithic diet, my homocysteine was above 15. And when I was doing a vegetarian-based diet, it was quite low. It was down like 10 or 11. So there was a bit of a difference with that. And homocysteine, of course, is an indication of the amount of waste products basically in your system. So you don't want that homocysteine over 15. And when I was eating Paleolithic, I was above 15. My insulin-like growth factor also dramatically went up with Paleolithic. So a normal range for that would be between 67 and about 200, 205. With a vegetarian diet, I was well under 200. And with the Paleolithic diet, that was up around 220. So there was definitely some anabolic activity happening in my body. Also my DHEA, which is a hormone, a base hormone that a lot of other hormones are made from, that number should be between about 71 and 370. And when I was a vegetarian, that number stayed fairly low. I mean, it wasn't low, but it was like 300. And in Paleolithic, I was over 400 with that. The biggest concern I had was with my cholesterol. Now, I know that a lot of people will say that cholesterol doesn't matter. That's okay. And maybe it doesn't matter, but in my books, you do not want a high LDL score. And LDL is the carrier protein that takes the product, from the liver to the site of injury to repair. And then the HDL, which a lot of people say is good cholesterol, it's the carrier protein that takes the material back for recycling to the liver. So my LDL with a vegetarian diet was just over 60. And with a Paleolithic diet, my LDL went up to 115. So it increased quite a bit. Also my HDL, which is what people call the good cholesterol, but like I said, it's really not cholesterol, but it's something that you would like to have a higher number on. That number was actually higher with a vegetarian diet. So with a vegetarian diet, my number was up around 87. With a Paleolithic diet, it dropped to 57. And my triglycerides also increased on the Paleolithic diet. So my triglycerides went up to 120 on a Paleolithic diet. My triglycerides were under 100 with a vegetarian diet. So those factors, to me, are very interesting. And what they suggest is not good or bad, but they suggest that when I was eating basically Paleolithic, my body was in a very anabolic state. So it had a lot of hormone activity. I also was producing a lot of waste products, a lot of bad waste products. And when I was a vegetarian, my waste products were significantly lower. I wasn't burning as much bad fuel, if you want to think, or dirty fuel, if you want to think of it like that. And my cholesterol was a lot lower, you know? And so I believe that cholesterol is a factor in heart disease. Certainly all the research that I've read suggests that. And heart disease runs in my family. So I think my takeaway on this is that short term, oh, by the way, my weight remained about the same. So my weight was about the same when I was vegetarian. My weight goes between 185 to 190 pounds, and I'm 6 feet tall. My weight has stayed consistent over the last 2 years. So that didn't change, despite the two different diets, which is interesting, you know? Because even when I was under 20 grams of carbohydrates a day, I wasn't losing a substantial amount of weight, which goes against what people would think. When your body goes into ketosis, you would assume you're going to burn a lot more fat and lose weight. One of the big problems I noticed in my own self was my bowels and my emotions. When I was vegetarian, my bowels moved very, very easily, and I was having several bowel movements a day, and everything kept sort of moving. I was getting gas, cramping from a lot of the fiber, but it moved pretty quickly through my body. When I switched to Paleolithic diet, my bowel movements dramatically slowed down, and I was getting some gastro problems. I started to get constipation. I also was getting problems with my stomach. I was having problems with GERD. I tested myself for H. pylori. I never had H. pylori. I also never had any ulcers in my stomach, but I was getting problems with acid reflux with the high protein, high fat diet. My stomach didn't like that. My stomach didn't like all that protein, so I did start taking digestive aids. I was taking Zypan from Standard Process and some other digestive pills to help break down the protein. And that helped a bit, but I didn't have to do that in a vegetarian diet. I wasn't doing that, right? I was eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, a lot of grains, and I wasn't having any problems with my stomach or my bowels. So that was a factor. I mean, I would get pain sometimes. It would wake me up in the middle of the night, bowel pain in my especially in my ascending colon. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and have so much pain that if I didn't know what was going on, I would, if I was a layperson, I would probably want to go to the emergency. I was in so much pain, and then I would just sort of massage my colon and relax, and it would die down. Never had any of that as a vegetarian at all. None of that. So bowels were a big issue for me. The other thing that happened, which was interesting, was as a Paleolithic diet practitioner, I found that I was eating a lot more. So as a vegetarian, I would eat like maybe one big nice meal a day and then a few small meals. But in Paleolithic land, I had to eat all the time. I was always hungry eating high fat, high protein. I was always hungry. And I ate a lot of fat. I ate twice as much fat as protein. So I followed all the guidelines. But I was always hungry. I was constantly snacking, constantly going to the fridge and taking meat and, like deli meat and cheese and wrapping it up in a piece of lettuce and eating it. I was always starving, always hungry. And I didn't get that as a vegetarian. I was very satisfied. And as I got into the Paleolithic diet, as I got in about 6 months into it, I started to feel very depressed. Emotionally, I felt drained. I was depressed. I actually started taking some St. John's wort for depression just to try to give myself a bump. I was feeling very depressed. And then I started to get anxiety. So it's a horrible mix of depression and anxiety. Very anxious all the time, very much on edge, not relaxed, not calm. And that is something interesting because I recently broke the Paleolithic diet and went back to my old eating habits. And that was like one of the first things that went away. The anxiety and the depression, it just immediately lifted. When I started to introduce healthy carbohydrates back into my diet, man, it's just like somebody just turned on the light, Felt so much happier. My body feels happier. And honestly, that was probably the biggest factor in my decision. I think that the Paleolithic diet is very good. If somebody's overweight or somebody has a serious health condition in my clinic, I still recommend that they do a high-fat, high-protein diet initially. And I give them a copy of that, and you can get the link below and you can download it. It's a great beginning diet, but I think that the projection for a long, long term, years and years of that eating, I would have to say are not favorable. Not for me anyways, and not something I'm recommending my patients do long term. I think it's much more productive to eat a variety of foods and to introduce whole foods, plants, fruits, and healthy grains into the diet for longevity. And just my opinion, but I did it, right? It's been 2 years for me of going through this and 2 years of keeping records, as you can see. So, I mean, I have the records, I have the blood work, and this has been my experience. So take from it what you will, but if you're out there and you're eating a high protein, high fat diet, and you don't feel good, it may be time to get some blood work, and it may be time to have a long look at changing your diet for a more balanced approach. Thank you.